All right. Hello and good morning. It's the 9th today. Ninth? Yes, 9th. And that would make it day 52. Another one of my favorite numbers for some strange reason. I don't know why, but 52's always felt. Maybe it's because there's 50. Was it 52 weeks in the year? No, actually, I think I liked that there were 52 weeks in the year because I liked the number 52 more than it was 52 weeks in a year was the reason I liked the number. I think the opposite is true. Um, but regardless, um, drank a lot last night, not alcohol. Drank a lot of water last night, so I was up and down quite a bit, but I still feel better today, and I felt better yesterday. I'm trying to keep the feeling better reports close to the chest a little bit because I don't want to overcommit to how I feel because it seems to change from day to day. But this would be probably week 3 of regular iron supplementation, and this will be the end of the first week of doubling the iron supplementation. Um, and the first 4 days were actually tripled the iron supplementation. I came across some older pills that had a higher content in them, and then on top of that, starting on Wednesday, I've been taking the beef liver supplements at full dose. And I noticed yesterday I got up and I didn't feel as tired when I woke up, and then at the end of the day, I didn't feel as run down. I wasn't feeling as run down or poopy, and I didn't need caffeine at all. I didn't need any kind of pep ups. I had some good chats with the missus and ate a good meal, and then came downstairs. And in fact, I was actually so energized that I had trouble getting to sleep. I was just sort of laying there going over things in my head. I was thinking about can you. I watched a Super 12 or a Super 14 highlight, a rugby highlight, and the referee penalized someone, and I didn't see exactly what happened because it was a highlight. They didn't give the whole clip, but he penalized a team, and then his verbal explanation was he's on his feet, and I was thinking, well, what was he penalising the guy for? Because the guy comes into the tackle, binds on to a guy, and then flips him out, like basically takes him out. And I think it was because the guy hadn't actually gone off of his feet and didn't have the ball. So essentially, he was on his feet, and this other guy came in and bound onto him, went off the ground, off his feet, and flipped him over. And the other guy didn't have the ball in hand, so he couldn't have been tackled. And I was just laying there in bed going, is that legal? Is it legal to, like, if he binds onto him, then it becomes a ruck because they're over the ball. But if that guy's fishing for the ball, or he's trying to go for the ball and that guy cleans him out, then he's being played without the ball and he's on his feet, so he's legal to do that. Whereas if he'd gone in and gone onto his knees or his hands, then wouldn't that be going off your feet into the ruck as well? Like, wouldn't that be considered diving in? Anyway, I lay there for, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes just trying to figure it out. In the end, I came to the conclusion that if the guy's on his feet and he's trying to play for the ball, then you shouldn't be able to just come in and tackle him away. It would be like clearing out the halfback before he's had a chance to actually pick the ball up and do anything with it. And then thinking about the plan for the game later this afternoon, I have a boys' high school game that I'm going to be refereeing. So it'll be more physical and more running around, a bit more sprinting, I expect. I'll be tired, or a little more tired, as is the way with boys versus girls games. And weather should be good. I'm looking forward to that. A friend of mine's coming out to watch, hopefully, and I'll get some feedback from him, which will be good also. But going back to the energy levels, I want to try to keep it all want to play it down, and not not play it up, not go with a I want to go with a low key sense of how it's meant to be. I don't want to make it out to be more than what it is. Then that way I get disappointed if it's not permanent. But I'm fingers crossed that it's going to be the right thing. I think the beef liver supplements will help a lot, especially for the recovery. One of the things that I miss a lot about being on testosterone is the recovery from exercises and going for runs or doing things that are physical. I found that when I was on testosterone, I would do an exercise or I would do a big workout, and then I would get to the end of the workout and I would feel tired. I'd wake up the next morning and I'd be a bit sore, and then the next day I'd be fine. And so I was able to do 4 or 5 days a week, some weeks, working out at a pretty high intensity. Nowadays it's more like 3 or 4 times a week, and one of those times a week is at a lower intensity. It's more of a just get your body moving sort of thing. But yeah, fingers crossed anyway it's the turnaround, because I would like to be at 100% going into summer with all the games that we're going to have and the Sevens tournaments. It's a good opportunity to make some extra pocket money. Boredom, yes. So as far as my quit is concerned, I guess a friend of mine started watching these videos, and to that person, if you make it as far as day 52, I'll be surprised if you do, but if you do, hi, I know you're there. I sat with him and we talked a little bit about the early videos that I did and how I was so sort of aggressively against the gaming and the smoking and all the rest, and how he wanted to push back a little bit on that and say that, you know, there's a place for those things in life. And I agree with him now, but at that time I was still freshly off of the shame of looking at where I was and where I wanted to be and realizing what it was that had held me back, and for how long I had been cultivating this false image so that I never really had to look at the real image, and using marijuana and video games to distract myself from having to face up to the fact that I was, you know, lazy and I was being unproductive, and I wasn't well organized in my life, and I didn't really have any good goals. I didn't have goals in all aspects. You know, it's one thing to say, well, my goal is to be a millionaire by 30. But if that's the only goal you have, you can become a millionaire by 30, and it's not, I mean, it's not impossible. It's not easy, but it's doable, and it's quite doable. And all that means is that you have $1 million by the time you're 30. That doesn't mean that you have good relationships. That doesn't mean that you have a good job. It doesn't mean that you have had education or learning experiences that have taught you a lot. It doesn't mean that you have fulfilling hobbies. It doesn't mean that you know, that the rest of your life isn't going to be a complete shit show because you've just been a fucking shut-in who's been saving and hoarding their money and essentially throwing it at investments. And I understand that. I understand that you can have one focus too many, and I was definitely aggressive with that, with my focus when I came out of those days. But the types of things that marijuana and video games were to me at that time were addictive behaviors. It wasn't about whimsy or fun. It was about being distracted from the reality of my life, which was that my life was run by chaos, and that I had not allowed enough order and I had not stood up to chaos and faced the things that I feared that I was avoiding. And essentially slayed my dragons. My dragons were laziness and fear of failure. And those two things have been taking care of. Those two things have been absolutely instrumental in making me feel better about my life right now, and keeping me motivated going forward. So so you're not wrong, person out there who knows who he is. You're not wrong, but I think it's the perspective of the things that you're talking about. Because there is, I agree, there is definitely room in a life for some whimsy. But if you're the type of person that uses that type of whimsy to avoid having to take responsibility for the things that you should be doing, then putting it down and ignoring it for a while is a useful tool. I see a lot in places where people are talking about quitting marijuana, who all have the same issue that I do, which is I always think that I can manage it, and then when it comes down to it, I can't. I always think I can do it in moderation. I always think, oh, I'll just keep it to one joint a night, and that never happens. And there's a reason for that. It's behavioral, but it's also chemical. And marijuana, it has a system of interaction with us that makes it very difficult, except for people who have either the right habit building mechanisms or who have maybe a lesser sensitivity to it. The rest of us are stuck going back into that loop every time we try to justify it. And yeah, and I feel it's the same way with video gaming and with sort of the fantasy world stuff, whether it's cards or D&D or anything like that. Don't get me wrong, I have been enjoying the D&D stuff that I've been doing recently, like once every couple of weeks, get together with a group of guys and hang out, and it's been fun. And I've really enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed being able to take some time to craft narratives and come up with silly ideas or whatever to do those kinds of things. But I could never throw myself into that the way that I did with video games, and if I did, I would be doing the same thing. I'd be avoiding slaying the dragons that need to be slayed in order to get on. So anyway, this video is getting on, so I'll call it a quit right there. Fingers crossed for my game later this afternoon that the weather is good, and that the high school boys are in a good mood, because it'll be good to have another good game, and if I have a friend coming out to watch, it'd be nice to get some good feedback. So anyway, that's it for me. Happy day 52. Ka kite.